Russia has begun a full-scale invasion of Ukraine after weeks of preparing a military posture. Members of the Ukrainian-Canadian community expressed their thoughts on this ever-evolving situation. This interview was recorded on February 24th, 2022.
First of all, we didn't even sleep hardly. We only slept maybe about 2 hours because all these texts and emails are coming from all over, not just locally, nationally, but also from Ukraine. And so this is a very tense situation. In fact, it's like a dark day for us and for Ukraine. And if it continues, it'll be a dark day for Europe also, because these kind of wars, all it takes is a spark to get out of place, and borders could be crossed very easily after a while. But we should say that Russia basically this morning, from our perspective that we looked at it, invaded Ukraine. And what we're seeing is just basically a very clear violation of Ukrainian sovereignty and the integrity of its territory. And just to take it further, basically Russia violated its own obligations under international law and the Charter of the United Nations. They are also the chair for one of the committees that deals with these particular aspects in the United Nations. And if you look at it, we as individuals, it was a shock, because here you have a democratic country, a democratically elected parliament, unprovoked, and yet you have a brutal attack, which is not only a threat to Ukraine, but also a menace to freedom, human rights, if there's any left at this stage, and basically democracy around the world. We basically need to share the values, the solidarity, basically, with Ukraine and the Ukrainian population. And basically, what we're trying to do is, at this stage, since we're in Canada, we're trying to call on the free world to immediately put in the economic sanctions. I think President Biden just had a talk at 1:30, so he provided a list. But my feeling is that's not enough. I think they should implement SWIFT. They need also to provide additional arms to the Ukrainian forces through Poland, so that they're able to continue fighting and defending themselves in the process itself. So basically, Ukraine needs more defensive weapons, and then there's also the humanitarian crisis. Imagine we're talking about 40 million people with these cruise missiles coming in. Can you imagine the impact this has on families, on kids, on daily life of people that for 30 years so far we're living in a supposedly democratic environment? All of a sudden, here you have a bully or a warmonger, basically a mini Hitler and Stalin put together, that basically wants to run over Ukraine and take it over. But what we're noticing also, we don't see that too much on the CNN or some of the other news. I think they sit too much on the balconies and film from far away and get texts. But what we're finding out is that the Ukrainians are fighting. They're taking them on. Diplomatically, they didn't want to solve anything, so Ukrainians have no choice. They're taking them on. There is going to be battles and bloodshed, but they have no choice. They have to fight, and we're seeing that actually occur in various cities in Ukraine. I believe even currently in the Kyiv area, the capital, where they're trying to take the airport, they had an initial group of Russian paramilitaries that sat down. From my understanding, reading the connections that we have from Kyiv and from Chernihiv, is that basically the Ukrainian armed forces have surrounded these paratroopers and are eliminating them. So the Russian army cannot bring in helicopters and fill in the ranks They cannot sit basically at the airport and fill in the ranks. The other irony of all this is you have another country, Belarus, that is also attacking Ukraine from the north. So in fact, Ukraine is fighting two countries from all angles that is upon them. So I think Ukraine at this stage needs economic, humanitarian support, and military hardware. They need to supply military hardware as soon as possible. Yeah, and the other thing is stronger sanctions, right? Here in Canada and also in Europe. In Canada here, I'm surprised we still have Russian hockey players picking up their $1 million when we know they're sort of borrowed from Russia, but they perform here. Yeah, and we're paying for that. We also have, for example, in Winnipeg, we have the Versatile, a tractor company that's 100% owned by Russian oligarchs, right? Where do you think this money is going? It's going to finance the businesses and support for the Russians. We have to somewhere coordinate them more effectively, systematically, what is occurring. I think England, Europe, US, Canada, I think they're a little bit late on some of the decisions that they've made. They should have decided that thing right away and imposed that. But politics come into play, I guess. They try to get more unified force or agreement on how to proceed. The other thing that's important to remember is we hear nothing about the Russian side. For example, we know from the media that we have from the Ukrainian media, not from the regular CNN and CBC, we're not hearing anything about it. There's over 39 cities in Russia that are facing protests now against the war. Mothers, veterans, people are coming out demonstrating. Moscow, Irkutsk, Omsk, Vladivostok, Ekaterinburg, Novosibirsk, Chelyabinsk, St. Petersburg. I'm just listing a few of them, right? And these are protests that are happening in those cities, and Russians are basically hitting with batons and arresting Russians that are trying to stop this war of nonsense that is taking place in Ukraine.
When I was looking online before, I'm not sure how accurate these numbers are, but they were saying like something about 43% of Russians are against this war, which I thought was very interesting. And yeah, seeing videos of these protests and things being shut down and attacked. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants this. And it's just individuals in power trying. I know the speech from Putin was pretty chilling when he's using kind of what's the word, blood and soil kind of language and rhetoric.
He's
which
basically
is scary and
a bully, a warmonger. His intention is basically to take over Ukraine and turn it into one of his colonies or a puppet regime, as he has done with Donetsk and the Luhansk republics, supposedly. And then if he's not stopped, he will go into Latvia, Estonia. Those are the little ones that he can go into. And sooner or later, they're going to have to do something about it. And I'm not surprised, right? We've seen that in Chechnya. We've seen that in Georgia. We've seen it in the Crimea area, southern Ukraine, 2014. And now we're seeing it in Ukraine. And, how much can you tolerate of that? I mean, you want to resolve peacefully, diplomatically, and you want to live peacefully in a democratic country, right? But yet here you have your economic bear that basically is not giving you any peace, right? They, for some reason, are inventing that Ukraine is a threat to them, right? When Ukraine gave up all its nuclear arsenal, Ukraine never had any intention of taking someone else's territory. They are basically moving it into Ukrainian territory. So this is a serious situation, not just for Ukraine, but for the world. And I just can't understand how people are going to stand by and watch, right? Yes. Watch it on TV and anything else.
Hi there, Ryan. I'm Alex. That's my brother, Orest. There's also the perspective that, for example, I'm married to my wife with 3 children. My kids are asking what's going on. Are we going to see Guido, Baba, their grandparents and so forth that are living in Ukraine? And it's very difficult to answer them, especially when everybody's super tired, didn't get enough sleep also, and more importantly, my wife, she's a teacher, and she had to go to work, 2 hours sleep and went to work. I can't just imagine what's going on in her head right now, that she's got to teach a class and then, and worry about her mom and dad who's in Ukraine, in Drohobych, and her brother that's in Lviv. And just think of all the families all around the world that have families in Ukraine. How do they go to work the next day and pretend like there's nothing, everything's normal? Psychologically, it does a lot of damage and sadness. You break out crying in the middle of, at any given time. If you think about all these things too much, and you're constantly thinking about all those things all the time. The only thing we could do here from our end is just go to church, pray at home, and hope to God that Ukraine will somehow make it through, and tomorrow will be a better day. And we're still praying, and it does help a lot, but the support that the Ukrainians need out there, as Orest indicated, they need the arms. They need that support throughout this whole business of Putin. From what he started here. And it's an ongoing issue. And, I'm presently not working. I'm a former retired principal, but even me at home, I don't get enough sleep. I can't get enough news. We're trying to get news from our parents on Zoom or Facebook, Viber. Some we reach out and they give us a signal back. Others have not said a word. So I'm not sure what's happening out in the east, because we have family also in Berdyansk, also in the eastern side of Ukraine, southeastern, right where all that's happening. And we're wondering, at one point they sent us a message that it's terrible and they're praying on their side. And there's not much they can do, but they're holding. Ukraine and Ukrainian army seems to be holding at certain various places. And as Orest indicated, CNN, they report things from balconies, visually what they see, and they really don't see a lot, because they can't see for miles on what's really the real picture happening. We're getting information from right where the action's happening, and capturing different troops, Russian troops, POWs, all kinds of things. I don't see that on the news, and so it's very disturbing, very hard.
Yeah, it's very horrifying. Yes. I mean, in the digital age.
No, we haven't. But for all my life, my parents, when they were alive, they passed away not too long ago. They kept telling us about the war that was going on, under Stalin and so forth, how they were running away from bombs. And, when you're young, you think, it's not happening here. We're in Canada and so forth. They passed away now, and all that come back like they just told me yesterday, like as if it just happened yesterday. And here we are. The new generation is going to experience this. What an experience this is going to be for them. And I'm sure their parents told them things, so it kind of, you think about these things that, happened years ago, but here they are again. And we're in the 21st century. What's going on? And a lot of cyber attacks, happening. People can't get information through. And there's a lot of disinformation that's getting through, from the Putin side, asking the Ukrainian military army to give up and so forth. But they're not going to give up. They're going to keep going to the end, because if they do give up, at the end, he'll shoot them all. So they know you're going to die one way or another. So why not try to defend Ukraine as best? And I'm talking about defending Ukraine, not attacking. They don't have the war in Moscow. Right? They have the war in Ukraine. And it's nice that Putin could, on his side, to get the war in Ukraine, because he doesn't get it at home. He plays Mr. Smart Guy when he's out there sitting around. But now his own population is rising, and they're demonstrating out there. So what does he do? He's arresting them, hitting him with batons over the head and arresting all these people. So I don't know how far, how far and how long is this going to go on? That he's going to be, imprisoning your own people? Where does it stop? This guy's completely lost it.
What are your thoughts on just Russian apologists out here in the West? We're seeing a lot of kind of right wing.
We heard it. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing what, Trump should go there, live there a little bit, along with the others from Fox News and so forth. They've got it good here. But it's unbelievable what's happening. But it's amazing what people do for money that Putin forks out. Everybody's got $1, on their head. And if you could fork out enough dollars for Trump, he'll say anything. And I'm sure they got more other things on him, which will come out eventually. Yeah. I'll let my brother continue here.
You talking about family, because we were on topic. We also have family in Donetsk.
Donetsk.
Yeah, in Lviv, Donetsk. But Donetsk is right on the border, as I think I mentioned in your past programs, of Avdiivka, which is 15 minutes from the where the war is occurring and the occupying Russian forces are. And so far, from the email that we got today with our folks, they said that they're bombing, but the Ukrainian forces are holding. And so that tells you basically that it's not going to be a cakewalk for the Russian forces, as they thought maybe in the Crimea area in 2014. And this is happening in various other parts of the Ukraine. We've been in touch with Chernihiv. We have a professor that works there at the Chernihiv University.
Don't know where that is.
Yeah, Chernihiv is about 4 hours north of Kiev, closer to the Russian border in the north. And he indicated to us that Russian tanks were moving in, and that basically the Ukrainian forces were knocking out those tanks with javelins. And they also took prisoners of war. They got a commander, Russian commander. They've basically have them on already on their presentations and interrogations that they're showing. They also captured 2 other Russian soldiers. If you look at some of those Russian soldiers, they're like 18, 19, 20 years old. This must be for them the first war, never fought. And they thought, we're going to put on the uniform and parade through. Well, there's a lot of Russian POWs now. Yeah. And so we'll see what happens. The other issue is the nuclear stations in Ukraine, right? My understanding is after a fierce battle, the Russian forces took the Chernobyl nuclear station, right? And so, there's still a battle going around, but the Russian forces are there. And what are the implications now of that nuclear station? If something happens there, are they going to blame the Ukrainians? Or, radiation has no borders, right?
That's the scariest thing. Just this lack of, empathy, obviously, and just foresight for anything, like just the reckless shelling right around Chernobyl.
Right.
Like if the concrete around there collapsed, like that's devastating for all of Europe.
Absolutely. And not only that, but just to let you know that Ukraine has 15 such reactors in the country. Chernobyl is just one of them. And there's one in Zaporizhia in the southern part of Ukraine, a very big one. That one, if it was to explode, it's 600 times that of Hiroshima. So, what happens to the people, what happens to the land, and it depends, I guess, on which way the wind blows. But can you imagine what will happen? And the West is just going to watch? I just don't see that happening. But we're already seeing impact of the decision. Stock market, gasoline prices, all kinds of things are happening that it will affect us. We're not immune from what is occurring out there.
How do we move forward from this? Like, the sanctions are, like, we've seen the ruble drop drastically just overnight. Right. But a lot of, like, Putin, as well as, the other elites and oligarchs, they don't have their money tied up in the Russian ruble, like it's in the American dollar. Right. How do we move forward without just, actually making those who are in the decisions?
Yeah, because right now I think with the devaluation that is occurring, it will have an impact on its population. My feeling is until the population on the Russian side begins to rise and take on, for protests, that may change the situation. On the other hand, also is, you're right, the oligarchs and all those billionaires around him hide their money in West and offshore everywhere. But from my understanding, is Britain is one country where a lot of that is occurring, and they're freezing all their assets, and there's various other initiatives that they're doing. But again, the pipeline issue, the pipeline of the Nord 2 Stream pipeline, they should close it completely. Right now, they're just supposedly closed it temporarily because they don't want to pass the licensing, but that should be shut down completely. Every step should be taken, sanctions where it's going to hurt them. Otherwise, he's going to be using that money to continue to devastate, if not today, tomorrow. And we're not immune from those impacts that may occur.
Yeah, it's definitely a period of time that we need to make sure that, Moscow, the aggressors, pay for their crimes, that they feel the consequences for their actions, set an example, because otherwise anyone with a nuclear arsenal can maybe feel like, oh, we can just take land with zero consequences, like take a little bit of an economic...
Yeah. Well, Putin and his oligarchs and all that group of people that voted, maybe we'll have Nuremberg 2 in Germany and have them pay for all the war crimes that they are committing in Ukraine, devastating people, families, and maybe the money that they're freezing could be used to pay the reparations. Yeah. and also the planes that they've knocked down in the Netherlands, if you remember, that flew away, that they basically so far haven't paid and taken care of that with any of the populations. Yeah, they should use that money to offset those costs and pay the people. But basically, we're calling on the Canadian freedom-loving people basically to support Ukraine. As I said, economically, humanitarian, and also if they also need defensive weapons and armed, yeah. So they need that in order to continue to resist and fight against the Russian occupiers.
And I guess it's also important to kind of note that we need to help Ukraine, to help them get through this, because the turmoil, the destruction that it's facing, like the people will need help for a long period of time.
Yeah, you're right. That'll take a while. That means financial assistance, economic, to repair, rebuild infrastructures, because they're hitting various infrastructures in Ukraine also. So we'll see. How it will work out. We want to be able to say Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava. Supporting the armed forces in Ukraine that are defending our country.
For all families that have Ukrainian families at home, this is a difficult time for them to have peace, and prayer is the only thing that they have. And reaching out to other family members, as we also reach out to, if we can, to family members in Ukraine, as well as friends and families that are going through the frustrations here in Winnipeg, who are contacting, each other, supporting each other morally, and all in all ways, all phases.
Yeah. Ryan, I should mention that there are Canadians fighting currently in the ranks of the Ukrainian army. Yes, from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So there are Canadians fighting there currently with the Ukrainian armed forces, right? So I can't give you his name, but I could, if you would want, I can always send you a picture or something. But I'm afraid to divulge his information. Yeah, but I'm just letting you know. And I've been in touch with him. I did send him an email, but he did not respond. And I know why. It's because they're not allowed to use cell phones and any electronic devices, because the Russians could track him with GPS and other type of information. But we do have Canadians fighting there currently, helping out the Ukrainian forces.